Welcome to England, Bristol, the Clifton Suspension Bridge, a marvel of Victorian engineering, innovation and perseverance. Now, when Isambard Kingdom Brunel first submitted plans for a bridge of iron rather than stone to span the Avon Gorge, he could not have foreseen that an Aston Martin would be driving across here today, or that the supersonic passenger jet Concorde would make her final fly past over this bridge, or the centuries of commerce, goods, services, business relations and family ties that would be strengthened because of this way. But what he did know was that the easing of connection is a fundamental pillar of human progress. And it is in that spirit that we introduce to you a software engineering initiative for our times, TSAPI. It's a long walk back to the office, and it's that way. So what is an API? Well, put simply, an API helps systems share information. Take emails, for example. You don't need to share files and import them to read an email. An API ensures that message gets through directly. But for that to work, we need a standard. And an API standard is a bit like a common language, like a phrase book. When two systems have the same type of data and understand the same language, they can talk to each other. Survey data is human insight, and all of these ResTech platforms use the same kind of data, but unfortunately, they don't speak the same language. Take Codit and Alchema as an example. One calls a single response question type single, the other type radio, so they can't share data directly, even though the survey data is the same. So Codit creates a connection that converts single to radio, and now they can talk. But that's no easy task. Imagine the complexity of that across all survey data types, and then bring in a few other players, all of whom have their own naming conventions for the same single response data. And already this is getting out of hand. Then add the rest of the industry all wanting to connect to each other, and we have a hot mess. Interoperability is a basic requirement for today's tech. And our sector is just not up to the mark. We're scaling technical debt. We're creating an unstable environment. Remember, we trade on credibility. We're all financially paying for this one way or another, and we are limiting the amount of innovations our sector can do while servicing this mess. And not only that, when new innovators emerge, they see this complexity, this mess, and ignore our sector. Consider that for a moment. Consider what we've already missed out on purely because people did not talk to each other before slapping API tags on survey data. But there is a solution. Platforms simply implement TSAPI, the industry standard for transferring survey data via API. Now we have the same data, we all talk the same language. Platforms can keep their existing APIs, just offer TSAPI as well, like they do multiple file types, CSV, .sav, Excel, etc. TSAPI is a simple open source solution. It's arisen out of years of consultation and collaboration among an international network of survey data users. It's free to all. It's a volunteer-run non-profit initiative to get our human insights data into a universal format and ready to connect. And we need you. Yes, we've secured endorsement from the Association of Survey Computing, for which we are eternally grateful. Yes, we were finalists in the Research Society's award for tech innovation. Yes, we're in talks with the ESMR Standards Committee and the UK Market Research Society, but above all else, we need you to demand TSAPI from your suppliers. We need you to ask your industry representatives and governing bodies to support the initiatives, and if you are a software provider, to implement the TSAPI standard. And by the way, if you're not doing so, you are already trailing many of your competitors who agree with us that easing of connection is a fundamental pillar of progress. Okay, that's my bit done. And if you're sitting comfortably, we'll go from the abstract to the practical with TSAPI's lead programmer sharing a few tales from the coalface, Mr. Tim Brownwood.
Thanks, Matt, and hello, everyone. I've been involved with the technical development of TSAPI, and I've also spent the last few years at the coalface of survey platform integration. So I'm going to take a few minutes to look at the more technical side of the standard. Let's start by expanding on why survey platform integration is so difficult currently. As Matt said earlier, when two platforms want to integrate, they don't speak the same language, so a developer will need to write a translator between the two. But developers are a clever bunch, and they love a challenge. So why is this a problem? Well, let's dig a bit deeper and look at the main barriers that make this kind of development so frustratingly difficult for everyone involved. Currently, in order for a developer to integrate with a survey platform, they need to have an intimate knowledge of how the platform works, and this is our first barrier. In effect, they need to become an expert in how that platform works and how to use it. They need to learn every question type to make sure they've got everything covered. They need to learn how to script and deploy a survey so they can test everything thoroughly. Does it support loops? How do grids work? What about multi-response questions and so on? With hundreds of survey platforms out there, it's not feasible for one person to become an expert in all of them. Of course, you could take a shortcut and become a partial expert, learn just enough to get by. But a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and sooner or later something unexpected will come out of the woodwork and the integration will break. TSAPI solves this problem. As a developer, you don't need to become an expert in any survey platform. You just develop a single connector against the standard and know that it will work against all platforms that implement the standard in one fell swoop. To develop against a platform, you also need access to it, ideally for free. A lot of companies are reluctant to provide this access, either because it's considered a premium feature or because they don't want to deal with the support headaches that come with it. TSAPI solves this problem for both sides. Developers don't need any access to a specific platform. They can develop a TSAPI compliant connector and know that it will work with all other compliant systems. APIs seem to be like fingerprints or snowflakes. Each one is different in its own unique way. As a developer, this means you're starting from scratch every time and you're going to get stuck. This means then you need to start hassling the survey platform support team. Why isn't this working? What am I doing wrong? What does this setting do? And so on. And sometimes the API does such weird and wonderful things that the developer needs a one-to-one tutorial in order to understand how it all works. Clearly, this is not scalable at an industry level and creates hassle and work for everyone involved. TSAPI solves this problem. Developers don't need support from platform vendors. Once they've implemented a TSAPI compliant connector, they know it will automatically work on all systems without the need to bother support and take up precious resources. Often, as platforms evolve, an API gets bolted on and grows organically. Other systems become dependent on it, and then you're stuck with it. I'm not singling out any individual platforms here because this is an industry-wide problem. However, it does mean as a developer, you're forced into writing slightly hacky code to work your way around the quirks, inconsistencies, dodgy design, and bugs in the API that you're targeting. TSAPI solves this problem. It provides good, peer-reviewed design out of the box. Software companies don't need to change their existing APIs. The TSAPI standard only requires that they add 3 simple new methods to their existing API. At my company, when we implemented the standard in our API, it took one of our developers less than a week to do it. One of our biggest clients wrote an application on their side to consume the API, and that took them about 3 days to implement. So we know that TSAPI is easy to implement. A few days of development time upfront could bring huge benefits in terms of time saved and innovation through connectivity in the long run. As Matt said earlier, the market research industry needs to get better at providing standardized access to survey data. And get this, we've actually been here before. Back in the mid-90s, the industry was wrestling with this very same problem. Back then, each platform had its own unique file format for exporting survey data, which meant that it was very difficult to transfer data between systems. Sound familiar? The problem was solved back then by the introduction of a standard way of transferring survey data via files, SSS. Great, but it seems we didn't learn from history. With the emergence of APIs, the same core problem has emerged again. We've all rushed to create our own unique API definitions, and now we can't flow survey data again. Those who cannot remember history are doomed to repeat it, as the saying goes. So, if you're a platform vendor, I would encourage you to find out more and start implementing the standard in your software. If you're a software buyer or a software user, please ask your vendor to implement the TSAPI standard. Survey data is human insight, and with all the disruption and innovation happening through AI at the moment, it's vital that we get our data into a universal format ready to connect. TSAPI is that format. Find all the resources you need on the TSAPI website at tsapi.net. There's full documentation of the 3 endpoints required by the standard. There's a Swagger page that allows you to see an implementation in action, and there are other goodies like a NuGet package and a Postman collection to jumpstart your development. So there you have it. If you're in any way connected to the research sector, this affects you. So please do support the TSAPI initiative and ask your industry bodies to do so as well.